Welcome to the Kahler Podcast, episode 15. Today, we're going to talk about before Kahler, there was the brass factory. But first, viewer comments. How you doing, Gary?
Well, I'm okay. Good old brass factory, the very beginning.
Greg Kirton, 9598, says, great video on exploring all the custom items and potential R&D works coming out of the Kahler camp. I have two questions. One, can you elaborate on whether there are any specific wear items on the 2300 series cam bridges, i.e. items that need to be maintained and or replaced over time? I recently acquired a guitar with one of these. It's my first Kahler cam trem, and it's a real blast to play. Very smooth, very little effort to engage the trem bar. I haven't attempted a restring yet, so it'd be nice to know what maintenance items I need to cover to ensure it operates properly. Two, do any of the Kahler Fulcrum bridges accept a D-tuna or similar type of device used to quickly perform drop D tuning? From my limited understanding, it seems like for a D-tuna device to work on any floating bridge, it would need to be limited to dive only to maintain tuning when deactivating the device. I've heard others mention that for the cost and potential headaches to make such a combined system work, it is better just to get a different additional guitar and tune it to that specific tuning. Thoughts, options. There's a lot here. Let's attack this one point at a time. Great questions. The first one, specific wear items and things to do when changing your strings. I bet you're going to say, oil those rollers, huh?
No, it depends on those rollers. You know, if you keep oiling them and you put them on, they're going to pick up more dirt.
Yes, they will.
That's a big problem for some people. Other people never, ever complain about the rollers. Now, the biggest thing that will give problems with the roller is your own sweat. As far as corrosion, there won't be any because that is a 360F hard brass roller on a 303 stainless pin held in by that fork. So the only reason you would have problems with it sticking or anything like that has to do with debris,
Yep.
which is picked up by your own sweat. A lot of people use the 3-in-1 for that, but very, very little of it. Don't grease it up because it will collect dust.
When I first got here, we had a very attractive lady come in and say, boy, oh boy, we sure can powder coat all your stuff, and won't this be great? And Gary looked right at her and said, yeah, that sounds wonderful. What we need is a salt test to figure out how good your coating is. I'm willing to pay for half of it. And she never came back.
If we could find a good replacement for black chrome,
Right.
we would. And so many people say, well, it's really simple. Just powder coat it. Well, powder coat's a lot different than black chrome. Powder coating, they can copy any shine or any black of the hundreds of different of black, shiny black, dull black that you get.
Yeah.
But how good's the coating? So the only way we know is to do a salt test. And if I could find a better coating than black chrome, by God, I'd use it because black chrome is really expensive.
Point being, the salt test is important because we all sweat differently. And some people have like a way more salty sweat. Some people have a way more acidic sweat. Some people have way more alkaline sweat. So your mileage will vary. Also, some of that debris, it's not just dust, dirt, whatever. It's dead skin from the hands. And you got that one hand right there by the rollers. 3-in-1 is a great oil. It's been around forever. My favorite is Triflow, and it comes in this little kind of syringe thing. I love it. I love everything about it. Don't over oil because then it becomes, instead of a lubricant, it becomes a grit attractor, and it'll turn into a paste. It'll no longer be an oil. It'll attract this gunk. It'll become a paste. Now it's an even worse thing. Give it a very, just like one drop, and then roll that roller like crazy, and then wipe it down with a rag. And if you feel like you didn't get anything with that rag, great. If you see oil on that rag, keep on going until you see no oil.
Well, there's a couple other things too. If you got so much debris on the sides of the roller,
Yeah.
just take a needle and kind of chip it out. I've heard of people taking the little fork and boiling it out.
Yeah. And
Just boil it out.
you know, something that's really interesting that we used to do when I was a diver offshore, you get rust everywhere. And sometimes, you know, we've got to get to a flask of oxygen or whatever, and the cap is rusted on, and you hit it with a hammer, you do whatever you can't get the thing off. And you know what always worked? Took a day, but it always worked. Get a little Coca-Cola and you put it in there, and that thing will just eat that rust right up. So we got a couple frozen rollers. Maybe we'll do a Coca-Cola test. Just for fun. I'm going to try it now because I know I got a couple frozen rollers. I'm going to give that a shot.
I wouldn't recommend it until you try it.
Well, no, do not go dumping Coca-Cola all over your guitar. If you do that, because don't do that. String hooks sometimes break if you don't put the strings in right, or if you put too much tension in, or if you try to force a bigger gauge in. We have different size string hooks. We have different size rollers. Let's see. Anything else? Don't over-tighten your clutch.
Originally in the 80s, it was like people were using 8s, 9s, and 10s to a 40, 42. But today we got people squeezing 56s in there.
Oh, yeah.
And that string hook originally was not made for any 56.
Oh, part two of this question. Do any of the Kahler fulcrum bridges accept a D-tuna or similar device? The fast, quick answer is no. And the reason why is because those things are all metric, and ours is SAE. So sorry about that. From my limited understanding, it seems that a D-tuna to work properly on a floating bridge, you need to limit it to dive only. That is 100% true. And the reason why is because on a floating bridge, it's all about balance of the string tension and the spring tension. And if everything is set up properly, if one string is out of tune by a whole step, which is dropping down to D from E, that's 2 notes or 2 semitones, which equals one whole step. That will throw everything else out. The way to avoid that is to deck the thing to where it's dive only. But we're working on something that should be done by the end of the year that will change everything.
Let me address that. I've heard a lot about D-tuners, and yes, we are working on that. And I would appreciate any emails coming in saying that's a good idea. I'd just like to know how many people would like to have a D-tuner.
I would say a lot, because it's really become kind of a standard thing now that sort of, if you don't have the ability to detune, you get kind of left behind. So
a standard?
Yes.
I don't see it as a standard. I haven't.
Yeah, well, are you out on the streets with all the kids these days?
They got to have a D-tuner.
Doing all their drop tuning.
Oh,
they
really?
They might tune to like.
Well, hell, make me wrong.
Yeah. No problem.
Email.
Yeah.
Email us. No, I'd like to know if I'm right about that, or is Eddie right? In any case, any case, we're working on it.
Yeah, the quickest way is to leave a comment here. Just leave a comment. But you know, there are some people who tune down to drop C, and then they want to be able to drop it down to like a super low B or something on a 6-string guitar. Not everybody that wants this low tuning wants to play a 9-string guitar. So, you know, they'll do a lot of that, but then they might want to drop it even further. We're actually past the prototype phase into we're going to do a pilot run here pretty soon, right?
But we're not sure when,
yeah.
But we'll get it done. And when it works, then we'll do a pilot run and show you a demo or whatever on it.
We're going to do our first several, and I am going to do some testing. And one of the things that we're going to do is floating fulcrum bridge to where you can make it fixed and then activate a D-tuner. That's all the more I'm going to say for that one.
Sounds good.
Next. Mercutio UK 2006 says, I was always attracted to the idea of a locking bridge without fine tuners and a standard nut. Was that something Kahler ever examined, perhaps on the Steeler platform. This is so funny. And I know you know why it's funny. Here's the whole reason that Gary, not a guitar player, got into guitar bridges. Why don't you tell him about the orchestra and that guitar player who couldn't keep his guitar in tune?
Well,
and let him know what year it was.
Well, see if I can remember. It had to be about, I graduated from high school in 56, so this was about 1958, 59. I'm a student director of the orchestra at the University of Nebraska. And we had a guitar player come in, and tremendous guitar player, electric guitar, and as also acoustic. He would just keep going to the gears at all the time to keep it in tune. Whenever other instrument in the orchestra has some kind of fine tuning, my God, on a guitar with string stretch and everything, no fine tuning. So I started to learn a lot about guitars that have no fine tuning as such.
Yeah, which back then would be all of them.
All of them is absolutely correct. So I started thinking about that, and before I got out of school, I had some ideas about how to do that, and then went ahead and developed it. But there's all kinds of bridges out there without fine tuning. I mean, the original Fender Strat probably is.
But this is for a locking bridge. A locking bridge, no fine tuners, regular nut.
Oh, well, no fine tuners, you're kind of nuts if you got a locking bridge and no fine tuners.
Now, I can actually address this because such a thing has existed.
Sure.
Since the 70s. Late 70s, the very first Floyd Rose was locking with no fine tuners. The difference is that from everything that I know, the Floyd Rose always had a locking nut, correct?
To my knowledge, yeah.
Yeah. You can get the Korean-made single locking Floyd Rose right now, and it locks at the bridge end, no fine tuners. Here I am selling Floyd Rose products on the Kahler freaking page. That's how much I love guitar players. And Gary, too, because he'd make me stop.
Gary, too. Well, thank you very much.
Hey.
We're going to be promoting Floyd Rose's stuff now.
Well, we kind of have a you made a Floyd Rose. You made the Floyd Rose Pro.
Oh, I like Floyd. We get along fine.
I don't think there's ever been a Kahler without fine tuners, has there? I mean, now I'm not talking Brass Factory or bass bridges.
No, it would be Brass Factory.
Yeah, it'd be Brass Factory or the bass bridges.
Well, actually, we make every unit here without fine tuning. Think about that. It can go either way. If you don't like fine tuning,
you can take them out.
Just take them off.
You just take them out.
I don't know what kind of a market there is for that.
I don't think much of one because there's already a bridge that does it, and it's not really on a lot of things. Yeah. Although the Guthrie Gove and Charvel does have such a beast. It's our old buddy Metallic Death 02. And he says, "This is me, Walter." Hey, Walter. I have bought many Kahlers from you directly when Bobby was with you. And yes, I combined both because of Dave Mustaine. Nailed it.
Well, it would be Bob Smith.
It must be. It's got to be
Bob Smith.
Great artist relations guy.
Great.
Kind of on again, off again, depending on what he's got going on in his life.
He's got going on in his life. He's a friend of the company here, and I talk to him at least once a week.
Holocult is saying the clutch on my post mount cam bridge is toast. That must be a 2200 of some sort. No friction. I got it used. I've messed with it and it's okay-ish now. Is it possible to install a new clutch? I know it's a nylon material and I've heard it's non-replaceable. What can our friend here do? Because in order to properly do it, you have to pull out the bearing, fish the thing out, and then put a new one in.
Now, wait a minute. You're asking me that question?
I'm asking you because I'm going to tell you this right now. Pulling out that bearing is not a user serviceable thing. You should not do that.
Yes, Eddie, you should not do that.
Hey, don't look at me as if I've done that.
Well, I've done it a number of times, but you don't pull it out.
No.
What you got to do is drill an extra hole into the side of the cam and push it out. That's the only way you get it out. But we can only do that here. The best thing I could say is take a good look at that cam and Just buy a new one, put a new cam in there.
If he were to send his cam to us for us to do it, would it actually be more expensive for us to refurbish that cam than it would be for us to just sell him a new one?
I just say $50 more, you're probably getting a new one because it's a job. I mean, it takes time to take that out of there. And he can have a choice. If he has brass now, maybe he'd like to try steel. He can buy a steel one.
Yep.
Aluminum one.
Or even aluminum.
And they're all 5-hole cams. We're not selling any 3-holes. So
when people want to know what the big difference is between the cams, there is a difference. Are you going to be able to hear it when you've got your distortion cranked up all the way and all this other? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. But brass highlights the lower harmonic, steel more an upper harmonic, and aluminum, the only benefit is the weight reduction. If you want it to be a little treblier, steel. If you want it to be a little more bassy, brass, but don't expect to hear more than a very subtle difference. Flyer Boy. Oh, the legend of Flyer Boy. Do you know about Flyer Boy?
I know a little bit.
You know a little bit about Flyer Boy, and all he says so cryptic. Thank you for the flyers. Now, I'd like to just point out that several podcasts ago, somebody said we got to admit that the flyer was a mistake. I think Flyer Boy would take great offense to that. Apparently, some kind of unreal collection of flyers. I'd love to have him on the podcast.
Well, sure, that'd be great.
So, anyway, Flyer Boy, we salute you. And that was the very last comment. So now we're about to talk about the Brass Factory. So, before there was a Kahler International, before there was APM, before any of that stuff, Gary came up with the Brass Factory. Your first foray into manufacturing, right?
Well, I'd manufactured things before, but not for guitar.
Not for guitar. Okay, now this was all in conjunction with the Fender Brass Works, correct?
Well, yeah. I had a good relationship with Fender, and I wanted to make guitar parts.
Right.
So contacted the president at that time and also the sales manager by the name of Denny Handa.
Ah, Denny Handa, yes.
Denny Handa, great guy. Anyway, we decided we're going to make a bunch of brass parts.
I know that the Brass Factory made parts for other people, but exclusively for Fender in the beginning. Were all of the Brass Works Fender things made exclusively by the Brass Factory, or did they have other people making them too?
No, to my knowledge, I think we made everything for Fender. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so.
The other two big ones that come to mind about who Brass Factory made parts for were DiMarzio, back when they made guitars.
That's right.
And BC Rich.
Yep. And one other.
One other. Help me out here. I'm
the Heart. The red,
Mighty Might.
Mighty Might. We know those people. That's from the Westheimer, and that's Westheimer's daughter. Forgive me, I can't remember her first name.
Really, that's Jack Westheimer's daughter is currently is the owner of Mighty Might.
To my knowledge, it was a couple of years ago.
Well, we should probably really talk to her, because you know what, the the black Strat and the white Strat over my shoulder are both Mighty Might necks and bodies. The green guitars with the reverse headstocks that I put the Steelers on. Let's see, one of them's right there.
Oh yeah,
that's a Mighty Might neck and body, and it's really good stuff. So maybe we should get a hold of them and see what's up.
We could. They're great people. Here's
the cool thing: we have some Brass Factory new old stock stuff, and we've been teasing you guys with it for a while. And we're actually getting ready to catalog it and sell it right now. And we've got the first three. There's a Strat with a Brass Factory bridge, a Tele with a Brass Factory bridge, and a bass with a Brass Factory bridge. And we're going to give you close-up looks at the bridges off the instruments themselves.
Now, we made many different versions of this. We had a very thin resonator on it. Then we made the big resonator. There you go. You can see the tracks.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that holds them from moving. We've got height adjustment for radius, 2 apiece. I think the outstanding thing about this is the saddle itself, because we put more brass into this saddle than any other brass we'd ever made. I can turn that upside down. You can see it's got a complete cutout on the back so that when we turn it right side up, there's plenty intonation going this way when you want to string it up from the back.
So now it looks like that arm's bent. Go ahead and put it forward. Okay, so you can see that extreme angle. Now put it all the way back. And you'll see that it's pointing down. So up, down, whatever, it looks like the arm's bent, but actually that threaded hole is in there at an angle, and it makes it to where you've got a lot more control.
Yeah, because, you see, it's going to set on the guitar since this is a free-floating bridge.
Yes.
So it's going to set up just a little like that, and then the bar is more in the right place. This is a big deal back in the early 80s when we did this.
Yeah, well, late 70s.
Late 70s and early 80s. This is very, very heavy. And all of this is pure 360 half-hard brass.
Well,
and it's all milled. Believe me, milling that out isn't the easiest thing to do. Castle slots, we'll call them, what they look like, are all milled out. And that really does add to the vibration that it's picking up.
Something that it took me a little while to figure out because I'd never heard anybody use this term on a bridge before. You'd say the resonator. It's got a medium resonator. It's got a large resonator. And whenever I think resonator, I think dobro. But that thing right there, the resonator is actually that great big thing at the very back where you would feed the springs and the strings through if you wanted to go string through bridge instead of string through block. That block is one giant hunk of brass. I mean, that is a heavy bridge. It was like a billet or something, right?
Oh, it's cut out of a 3/4 inch billet. And that means all of this brass that was here was all cut out with a fly cutter. My idea was that if we put a heavy resonator on here like this, then we know that if we cut out in the back, believe it or not, you can see it on a scope, that if this was all solid, the scope will show one thing.
Mm-hmm.
However, with this cutout in the back, it helps to amplify the highs. The vibration comes down into the smaller, little smaller edges here, and you can see the difference.
Now, let me just point out to those people who are like really paying attention for extra bonus points here. Brass accentuates the lower harmonic, but the way that was cut accentuates the higher harmonic.
Well, what we thought was that it would balance off more of the lows. And with this, if that was solid, you would hear less highs. But with that cut out, you hear more highs. Now that I said that, I've got to tell you, though, it's in the ears of the beholder.
Oftentimes when we are dealing with things like that and we're looking at things on a scope, I know that from my background, most of the time when I'm looking at a scope, it's for things that are ultrasonic. And the very definition of ultrasonic is beyond the capabilities of human hearing.
That's right.
So,
well, you do that for your dogs, don't you?
I do. I figured out how to talk to them to where only they can hear.
That's what I felt.
Well, I've tried to teach them all how to like play a different instrument and sing so that we could make a band. But the problem is they don't have thumbs.
No thumbs.
No thumbs, man.
Poor dogs.
I know it's a rough existence. Can you turn one of those saddles or turn something sideways so they can see how thick that saddle is? Look, that's solid brass, you guys. Yep. And back in the 70s, people were brass crazy, so much so that Ibanez made a guitar for the NAMM show, one-off, that was supposedly solid brass. And it weighed like 80 pounds.
You mean a whole guitar?
A whole guitar.
Oh, no, it weighed more than 80 pounds.
Well, see, now the
neck and everything?
Yeah, you got ahead of me.
Oh, my God.
Because the thing is, when they made it out of solid brass, they discovered that it was so damn heavy that nobody could pick it up. So they actually had to chamber it. And but they built it as like the solid brass guitar, but it was actually chambered, and it was still like 80 pounds as a chambered like brass guitar, and it was a gimmick. It was a gimmick. You're also brass crazy. Here's a whole brass guitar.
Yeah, they were using flat sheet brass, probably not
maybe.
barred brass. The other thing, if I'd have known that, and in that age, then they could have bought a Kahler with an aluminum cam.
But this was before.
Oh, I know.
Before the Kahler. You could have built
it would reduce the weight, for goodness sakes.
It would, but then you would have had to make a time machine to go back from like 82 to 78 when they did that.
Well, I'm experiencing a time machine right now, day after my birthday. I know I just turned 87, so I really feel different now.
Especially because you turned 86, not 87. So you've already gone back in time 1 year. Congratulations.
No, I am saying I did turn 86, but I'm going on 87. So the 87th year does feel different. I think maybe at some point in time we reverse aging.
Yeah, so it's the Benjamin Button thing where you age in reverse.
That's right. Button, that was some show.
I think before that, they did it on Mork and Mindy. Mork and Mindy got married. They had a baby who was born an old man, and he aged in reverse.
Oh, my God. I think we should go to the next brass piece.
I think you're right. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about the Telecaster one. Same saddle, same bridge.
Same resonator.
Yeah.
The same idea here with the bars coming down, because that's less mass, and it does make a difference on the highs. And the saddles are smaller, obviously, but they're of the same purpose. We're trying to make this look along the lines the same as a Tele.
Right.
It could be. This can be strings through the back, or you can have strings right here through the right below the bolt.
Body or bridge, your choice. Now I want to give you guys a little bit of a tech tip here. I, like almost everybody else, was all, we got to do the strings through the body for increased sustain and resonance. Gotta. I have experimented with strings through the body, strings through the bridge. I have done it to where I've done half through the body, half through the bridge. Oh, well, I want my higher strings through the body, but then the lower ones through the bridge and all this other stuff. And the conclusion I've come to is, if you have the option, do them through the bridge, because the break angle on the saddle, believe it or not, will make a huge difference in how slinky your strings feel. And it's easily provable if you've got a Tune-O-Matic style bridge. Crank the tailpiece all the way down, play it, make note of how stiff it is, and then bring it all the way up to where you barely have any angle over the saddles, and you'll be amazed. It'll feel completely different. Don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. No, that Telecaster right up there had a regular Tele Bridge on it.
Yep.
And I just unbolted and rebolted, and the same thing with the Strat Bridge too.
Yes, it is.
Unbolt, rebolt.
That's all the same spacing. The footprints are the same. Take it off and put it on. Now, that's not to say that you may have some difficulties, because there are some instruments out there that look like a Strat and Tele. But God only knows where they were made.
Well, there's another thing, too, that everybody needs to be aware of, and that is this. Somewhere along the lines, probably when Fender started making things in Mexico, they changed the spacing on the Mexican ones. So American, and from all the Japanese Fenders that I've ever dealt with, their 6-hole spacing is the same. But on the Mexican ones, it's hit or miss, because that Strat right there is actually made in Mexico, but it's made to look like it's from I think the late 50s, early 60s. And so they did vintage spec.
Okay, so if they have a problem with that,
Yeah.
can they fill that with wood and then re-drill the holes?
Always. You can always do that. You need to really know what you're doing as far as measuring goes. This is why a lot of companies, what they'll do is they'll have one anchor hole that's perfectly round, and the rest of them will be like elongated slots so that it's universal.
Yeah.
In fact, you did that with the Steeler, where the low E side was elongated on the post.
Yep.
So that people, like if the post wasn't quite exactly right, were not out of luck. Yeah, you remember what I was telling you the other day, the Floyd Rose Pro that you and Floyd and your respective teams designed together.
Yep.
Well, you guys did that humbucker spacing. That was something Floyd wanted, and the only version you can get now has regular spacing. And so if you were to try to buy new parts to put on your APM-made Floyd Rose Pro, they will not fit. All right, let's talk about this last base bridge. Yet another one that's just gigantic hunks of brass.
Something I'd like to point out, and we've talked about this, what we call the resonator. Okay. This also comes with a heavy resonator, but we only have a few of them left. This is called a formed plate. In other words, a simple bent piece of metal. That's what we're most familiar with because that's the most inexpensive way to make a plate. Now, this is out of brass, this plate. This is all milled, this brass. You can see that is milled out on the back so that when I turn this over, it's like this. When the string comes from this far back and through the deal, well, then that's why, and I'll show this again, that's why this is completely milled out in the back. So your string is going to come right through this slot, right over that ID witness point and out. Then you can adjust it up and down for your radius. You got your intonation right here. You're all ready to go. But that is an outstanding base bridge. You got plenty of room so your palm doesn't get in the way of riser screws and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's another thing that we haven't said yet. These saddles are so thick that you're not going to cut up your hand on your riser screws. 5 screw holes that put it in, like they match up with the old Fender P-Bass, and actually the bass that it's on the that ESP right there.
Right.
Yeah, it was just immediate drop on, very easy to do. There's only one thing that I think might kind of throw some people off, because we're used to saddles not being so great big and thick. I know that when I was looking at them, I was thinking, well, these strings should be a lot higher than they are, because look how huge these, wait. And then what I had to do was actually reconcile the fact that the saddle is so thick that it looks like it's at the proper height when it's sitting on the plate and you haven't raised it at all.
Yeah. You got to look at the actual top of the witness point, and that's an ID and not an OD. So you got to look a little closer where that is. You can't just go and rise the screws and think you got a perfect radius. Look at it.
Something else too that I want to make really clear. There's the proper way is if the saddle is you've got your 2 screws going through here, right? So the proper way to have it set up is to where both screws are making it to where it's nice and flat. Some people have one to where it's cocked up to try to follow the radius. That is incorrect, and it will cause wiggling problems and tuning stability problems. But the thing is that with how thick these saddles are, there's this weird thing that I noticed, and I was thinking, well, geez, I wonder if you guys knew about this, did it on purpose, or if it's just a happy accident. If I were you, I'd say, oh, we did that on purpose, of course. If you don't have it perfectly level, those screws won't be in the tracks. You have to have it perfectly level, and if it's not, then the screws won't be in the tracks, and it's an instant visual indication that you need to, level it out.
You're talking about this base bridge.
I'm talking about all of them. Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying, you've got 2 height adjustment screws on each saddle. So those height adjustment screws need to be the same exact height in order for it to sit level. Mm-hmm. And if they're not perfectly level, then they won't sit in those tracks. They'll be kicked out. And so then that you have to get in there and you have to adjust it properly. It's actually one thing that I just marvel about with all these bridges is the tolerances are so tight.
They are.
And I have dealt with most bridges that there are only a handful that I know of that I have no experience with. Weird things like the Paul F. Stroh, or things that most people have never seen, the head crasher, things like that. But I've dealt with so many, and the tolerances are not as tight as these are, and they've always been this tight going back to the 70s.
Well, I'd like to say one other thing is that this is a family. This here was the tremolo. We actually have this in a fixed bridge also, which we don't have out here. I forgot that. But
no, I on purpose left that away because we're kind of doing something with that right now.
Oh, okay.
Little bit wonderful. Of a secret. Oopsie.
Oh my God, he's got a secret on me. How about that?
Actually, we got a secret on everybody when it comes to those fixed bridges.
Yeah, we do. We just had a name. This was the Brass Factory's main line of goods.
Right.
We made 2 different sizes of resonator here, and I think Fender bought the smaller resonator. We made this one here in the same resonator as that. And this one here, we only made in this resonator, but we also have a formed or a stamped bridge as well. So that was the line for Brass Factory. Outside of some flat stock.
Yeah.
We made flat stock for all of the Les Pauls and the Stratocasters, meaning pick guards. And that pick guard on a Les Paul is pretty tricky. You got to have the little fasteners and because it sets off the guitar.
Well, it's a very small pick guard too. You know,
but we also have all that in stock. For instance, the Tele plates, the back plates, the round ones, the square ones, the oblong one, the neck adjustment plates. We got those. If you're interested in any one of those, send us an email and we'll you'll get an answer. Believe me.
Now we're preparing to do a guitar show towards the end of the year, and a couple other things in development, a top secret project that you will all know about here probably within, I'd say, about the next month.
Yeah, I'd say next month.
About in the next month, you guys will all know about our upcoming top secret project. It'll be revealed in the next month, and I got to tell you, probably the coolest thing I'm involved in ever in my life. After all that stuff, after the dust settles and everything, then we should have a lot more time to get everything cataloged properly and things like that, because we have more Brass Factory stuff than just these 3 main things. We have Brass Factory tailpieces for 2 pneumatics, but we don't have any bridges. So we can't really sell it as a set, but we do have the Les Paul pickguards. We've got a bunch. We have jazz bass control plates, lots of them.
We do. There's a lot of that. Well, they're not finished, but
now we got a bunch that are finished too.
Yeah, there's some that finished, but we got a heck of a lot of pickup control plates that are not finished.
We have so many things, but the thing that we really want to focus on first is selling out the new old stock, because we don't want to mix that with the things that we have to use modern techniques with, because the new old stock that's been finished is finished with an epoxy that we're not allowed to do ever again. No. So you're getting something that's very special if you get one of the new old stock things that you just can't get anymore.
But all this is not gold, by the way. What you're seeing is real brass here, many, many years ago, and it looks like it's brand new. And what that is a highly polished brass with an epoxy finish that's been baked on there at about 390 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's just indelible. I mean, it's the best finish that you could possibly put on something.
So good, the United States government says that it's too good and we can't do it.
Well, it's, what do you call it? Cancer causing.
That's right.
Whatever it is.
But only in California. So
yeah, I think that's probably true.
So move to Oregon and it won't give you cancer.
Oh, good. I would never move to Oregon. All right. There's just one other thing I'd like to say. Back then, I made a lot of parts for Fender, but there's one part we don't have here.
Are you talking about the infamous claw?
The infamous claw. And I'll tell you, if anybody ever sees that, let us know. Or if you got it, you want to sell it or trade for something, let me know. Because, I don't know, weighed over 2 pounds. It was the damnedest looking bridge.
We need a claw.
We got to get one because it's just so we can show you what it looked like.
Now,
and I sold them all out, unfortunately.
Wasn't the whole idea behind the claw Fender's idea? And they said make it as big and obnoxious as humanly possible because we want it to just be so outrageous that nobody could believe that
I don't
such
think
a thing
they said
exists.
obnoxious. They just said make it as big as you can because it's going to be heavy. And my God, we did. And but we sold completely out of them. From a marketing point of view, people really, really like that claw. Fender sold them all. Anybody sees a claw out there somewhere, at least let us know if you see it on eBay or wherever. Yeah. Or if you got one yourself and you're not playing that bass or whatever, you want to trade for something else, let me know. I'd just like to get one for anyway, for history's sake, if nothing else.
We do like to have at least one of everything for archival purposes.
That's right.
Okay, well, you know what? I think that's a pretty good place to stop. Next week, I'm going to have a special surprise for you.
Yeah, that's going to be special.
Yep, and then the week after that, another one, and then another one, and then yet another one. It's going to be a bunch of exciting things, one after the other. So that's it.
That's it.
Until next time, I've been Eddie Kernan.
And hey, I'm Gary Kahler, and let us hear from you. We'd appreciate it.
See you next week.